Okay, and welcome back now to Module 2 of the Miller System with myself, Stephen Summers, and of course, Mr. Jim Miller, who I'll bring on in just a second. This module really is where the rubber hits the road because we're going to go through the structure of the conversion call that you will very shortly be implementing with your prospects. And this is a call that Jim has perfected over the last 25 years of being in the sales, persuasion, influence process. And really, this is everything you need to know when it comes to closing these high-end sales with your prospects. Now, in this module, we're going to go through each of the stages of the process. And then in the later modules, we're going to go through each specific step of the process and break it down for you, going even deeper within each step so that you can understand exactly what's involved at every stage of the process. And then later on in the system, we're going to do some applications of the entire process, meaning we'll do some role plays with myself and Jim to show you exactly how the call works so that you can take it and you can implement it instantly with your next calls, and you can make a lot more money in your coaching or consulting business. So, Jim, the first thing I want to do is bring you in to talk about this type of call, why it's effective, and then we're going to jump into the actual granular steps.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here tonight. And of course, there's no other subject that I enjoy talking more about than the subject of influence, negotiations, and I'm glad to be part of this conversation, very honored. What I'd like to do is, first of all, let everyone know that the system that I work with today and that those people who work with me actually now employ within their own businesses, this is a system that has evolved over 25 years, meaning it's got quite a history. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's got a lot of trial and error. It's got a lot of, let's just say, maturity in the sense that it's been tested with thousands, literally thousands of individuals, both in a face-to-face setting, telephonically, and also, too, in programs in written format, and it has been proven to be, from what I see, and I say this in all humility, one of the most effective ways of influencing an individual at a truly authentic level. And that's the key, that this is a truly, as I say, if you hate selling as much as I hate selling, then this is a system that's going to be right up your alley. It's going to be congruent with your values, congruent with your skill set, and also, too, the relational type of effect that you'd like to, number one, foster with your client, initiate with your client, and then from there perpetuate with your client. Because, again, from the very beginning, it is coaching, it's consulting. And so this system, like I said, has worked internationally as well as domestically, and both at international level organizations at high dollar levels, as well as the individual entrepreneur or solopreneur that's speaking to simply a handful of individuals over a period of time. So I'm very excited about it and sharing this system with those of you who are with us tonight.
That's great, Jim. And one thing actually I'm going to pick up on just straight away, you mentioned the word there, relational. Let's just jump into that for a second and explain what we mean by a relational process.
Well, a relational process is the antithesis, the opposite of a relational process would be a transactional process. And many of you, if not all of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with a transactional, whereas there is this exchange of services or products for money. And in the end, that's really what everything boils down to, except the difference with relational and transactional is in transactional, that's where it ends. There's an exchange for money and for goods, and that's where it ends. In a relational transaction, a relational program, what we're looking to do is we're truly looking to find out who it is that we're working with, to provide them what is best for them, even if that means that we decide that the relationship is not going to work between the two of us. And in relational, what we're also looking to do is we're also looking to improve the life, the identity, the effectiveness of our client over a period of time. So transactional is something that's immediate, it's sterile. As I said, that's as far as it goes, whereas relational, there is a relation that is formed between the client and the coach or the consultant. Yeah.
And I'm sure you would have seen over your time then, Jim, we create the relationship with a client. I would imagine then you would have seen, as a result of that, people continue to invest with us as coaches or consultants over the longer term because we actually have a relationship with them, right?
Oh, well, without a doubt, the consistency and the continuation of our clients with us, as importantly too as well, Stephen, is that there is an even greater investment of the client in the services that we provide. So I have found that not only is there a continuation of the relationship, but it's generally at a pretty lofty level, because keep in mind, people out there are very desperately searching for appropriate and effective guidance, and also authentic, congruent, ethical, and relational. This is really what we all want, unless we want something different.
Sure, that's great. And the thing you mentioned there about the investment levels as well, I think that with this system, I'm sure you would agree that really the investment level is something a lot of coaches and consultants tend to worry about. Like, I'm asking for this amount of money. And we did talk in the last module about reducing scarcity and things like that in your life. But with this process, I think the beautiful thing from what I can see is that the dollar investment actually doesn't matter when we bring people through this process. Would you agree with that?
Oh no, I'd wholly agree, and I found out over the years through the great trial and error, when I find that those clients who initially signed up for my programs in the early days, and I was out there making certain that I priced my program to sell, right? And then come to find out that, for example, they might have bought into my program at $500, and I find out later that they've invested $5,000 with someone else, right? So the money was always there.
Exactly.
It's just I priced myself out of that profitability.
Yeah, and I can actually share with you as well, Jim, thanks to learning the filtering processes that we go through with our clients in one of my businesses, thanks to what I learned with yourself. I have actually seen and been surprised when I ask questions such as in a questionnaire form, how much have you got to invest right now in investable capital in, say, not this program, but in this idea. So in our case, at times it could be physical stock. So how much have you got to invest in physical stock right now? We would ask that shortly after asking somebody, what level do you want to get to? Are you committed to getting to each month with your business? And it always amazes me because there's people out there who you don't know, you never speak to, you don't have any idea of their financial capability. And so many times when we have these questionnaires, we actually see that people have, 25, 30,000 and beyond to invest in things that we just didn't know they had that much money to invest. Now, it's not that we as coaches or consultants are looking to scoop in there and take all of that. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that people have a lot more access to financial resources than you can possibly imagine. And so we're not going to go in with a framework of transactional. We're going in to say, well, they have got financial resources to exchange. We have a proven process to convert them into one of our programs. And then quite simply, we're going to help them multiply that financial resource, which is what this call is all about, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. The truth is, and I'm certain that many, if not most listeners will realize that we generally price our programs as a result of our limiting beliefs. Right? We think that the only way that an individual is going to buy into my program is if I price it at a certain level. And in some marketing campaigns, that may be true, where you're looking to, basically have a trigger where you're getting people into your funnel, at $10 or $90 or whatever the case may be. But once they're in the funnel, once they've identified themselves as a prospect, they've been through the filtering process, then what we have the opportunity to do is now step out of the sales transactional type of thinking where we believe we have to price ourselves into effectiveness and put all of that aside and suspend that through this process where you hopefully will learn that individuals are willing to pay however much resources they have available or they can find availability to, if in fact they believe and they're assured as a result of your program that they will be able to achieve the success or the outcomes, the intentions that they've been seeking for some of them all their lives.
Exactly, and I've seen that to be true time and time again. So with all that said, Jim, let's jump into this call now. Let's go through each of the stages in the process. And as I said, in the later modules, we're going to go even deeper in each of these steps. But for now, you're going to get this overview. This call will change your life. I can absolutely guarantee you that. All right, so let's break down this call, Jim. Let's start now at the first of what we'll call 4 phases in this process of the conversion call. And the first phase really is the authority frame. Then we move to the cognitive dissonance frame, as you can see on the screen here. Then we move on to definition of the program. And then the last stage is resistance. And so what we're going to do now with Jim, he's going to bring us through each of these stages, talk briefly on each of the different points within each stage. And as I say, from here, we're going to be breaking these parts of the process down in the later modules. And then we're going to be bringing it all together a little bit later on. So Jim, let's start with the authority frame. What does that mean and how does it work?
Well, let's look at the word authority from the very beginning. I would hope that everyone on this call or listening to this program would understand that as a coach and or as a consultant, there is an expectation that there is a level of authority that we must have in order to market ourselves as in this position. And because this is what people are looking for. They're not looking for a coach. They're not looking for a consultant. What I have found, what people are searching for is authority. Authority in the sense that I know that I can give you certainty and confidence that the system, the program, the product, the service that I'm offering you will in fact allow you or give you an extraordinary opportunity to achieve the intentions, the results that you're searching for. And that authority, number one, is based upon 2 things. It's based upon our skill set, and that can stem from the experiential, it can stem from the intellectual, it can stem from the resources that we have available. So one of the things that I find as a coach, as a consultant, is that my clients expect me to be the authority. So therefore, it's incumbent upon me to continuously read to make certain that I'm putting myself in front of authority figures, other coaches, other gurus, scholarly papers, publications that are very worthy in psychology and philosophy, in negotiations at an intellectual level. So the authority frame, number one, assumes that I have the knowledge, the skill set, the intellect, the ability, the experience that my clients, that my prospects are looking to invest in and receive benefits from.
Yeah.
That authority frame, number one, means that there is a state that I'm inducing myself in to be certain that I can get this across to my clients and my prospects.
Would you say, Jim, and we'll talk about state in just a moment, but would you say that within the authority frame, is it as if the person we're speaking to is placing a lot of the responsibility on us to generate the result, or what would you say about that?
I would say that is absolutely the case. I mean, there's always an understanding that it's up to the client or the prospect to make things happen. But let me assure you of this, is that if they had the ability to make things happen, they would have already done it. So there's an expectation, but more importantly, there's somewhat of a desperate desire that they can be presented with a system, with something that they can follow step by step that will assure them the opportunity of success.
Yeah, and that's why we say they buy our system, right, rather than us.
They buy our system rather than us, exactly. And once you are able to develop a system that you know will work for you, then you can speak with that authority. And that's why, again, as long as we're selling, there is no authority there, because we're basically putting the client or the prospect in the alpha positioning, because we're asking them to make the decision to basically determine how this call or this session or this this face-to-face sales experience is going to end. And so therefore, we basically relinquish authority. So when I speak about authority, number one, it's authority in ourselves. It's authority knowing that the system that we are going to execute into is, in fact, extraordinarily effective. And so I begin the phone call, and again, most of my work is done telephonically, meaning that I'm speaking to individuals that have responded to marketing material, etc., and then there is subsequent individual phone calls, or there's group phone calls, or there's a purchase of a product. And so that authority frame has 4 components to it that I'd like to go into right now, if that works with you, Stephen.
Yeah, let's go for it, Jim.
Okay, so the first authority, within the authority frame, this is very, very key, especially in the negotiation process. I learned this from Max Bazerman, and also in being associated with the Harvard Program on Negotiation and their publications. You will find that one of the more important aspects is to capture the time, to make sure that we own and can define the time that will take place between myself and the prospect on the phone. And when I say capture the time, what I mean is to frame the time in a sense that that time now is something that is beyond the definition of what it normally is. Now, what do I mean by that? Because it sounds a little bit obscure, but I'll go into each one of these as we go into the different modules. But what I'll do is I'll basically let an individual know that the time that we're going to spend together is, number one, it's very precious. Because within this time, there will be a conversation. And within this conversation, there will be the opportunity for transformation. And it's transformation, the changing of form, the changing of who we are into what it is that we must be in order to achieve the results we want. This is something that's all within the framework of time. So the time we're going to spend together may be a lengthy period of time, it may be a shorter period of time, but I want to suspend all pressure upon us to be externally affected by time, and instead to enter into this timeless conversation that could affect truly the rest of our lives. The second thing in the authority frame is to make certain that that individual knows who I am and what it is that I've achieved, and I call this the self-edification, meaning that it's up to me to take the authority in the sense that I'm going to position myself as the authority, someone that has the experience, someone that has recognition, that has an effective performance to a point that the individual on the other end of the phone would desire to have. I've been down the road many, many times and further than this individual is seeking to also go down as well. So I want to make certain that they know who it is I am, they know what it is that I do to prepare for these types of calls and these types of programs, to also make certain that they understand that there's many numbers, scores of individuals just like themselves that have also been involved in this conversation and have achieved extraordinary levels of performance, right? I also wanted to define the process because, again, if you read Sun Tzu in The Art of War, one of the things that you'll read and one of the things that affect most about the book is to be able to define the battlefield, right? If you are the one who is able to define the battlefield, meaning define the process, what is going to take place on this call, then you maintain and accentuate a position of authority because you are now in control of time, you're in control of the conversation, and you're in control of the direction of the conversation. And then finally, as an authority, what I'm now looking to do is initiate the process of commitment, meaning that I get the individual to commit basically to, for all purposes, basically to surrender to the process that I take them to by getting a verbal commitment, meaning that they're willing to hand over the alpha positioning to me. They're willing to maintain a beta positioning, and as long as I've got that alpha beta positioning, it's truly for the client or the prospect's best interest. And so I look for this commitment, and it's the beginning of the commitment cycle, the commitment stage that I'm going to continuously bring them through. And many of you are familiar with this process in your own sales or your own negotiation, and that is getting a commitment from an individual. But let me tell you, it's extraordinarily important to the authority frame.
Just on that, Jim, I know we're going to go deeper into that later on, but just as an example, what would be a question or a way that we do get commitment? Like, what is it that we would generally say at that point to get that commitment?
Well, I would generally get them committed to the fact that they're going to play full out, that they are in a place of privacy, that they're available to take notes at an extensive level, uninterrupted, that they consent to the call being recorded, and that they also consent to the time that I'm going to request of them, and leave the determination of the process, of the flow of the call, up to me. So I would ask them, Stephen, as an example, Stephen, I'm going to ask you, number one, are you in a place of privacy where you will be uninterrupted, where you can take copious notes if necessary, and that you can allow me to take you through a process that could take more time than you may have first initially been committed to? Are you good with all of those aspects that I just asked you of?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great example. I remember going through this process with yourself before, and it's very, very effective. So it certainly makes you feel very assured, have a lot of relief in the fact that I'm finally speaking to somebody who can get me where it is I'm looking to go. So very, very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And quickly on that one, just as a side note for everybody, you use when you're on a telephone call, I believe you use an app for your phone. Do you want to just mention what that app is, just so everybody can know about that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I believe it's very important for the client and for myself to record the call. And there's a number of reasons why. Number one, they realize that the call is very important to me as well as themselves. And I find that all of my clients will continuously come back to me and let me know that they listened to the call for a second, a third, or a fourth time, and they were able to extract in each listening something different, maybe something more profound, maybe something they didn't quite understand. Because again, a lot of times the concepts that I introduce, and you will too, through this process, are new concepts to them. And at times they may be concepts that they don't quite grab, but that there's a certain intrigue. And also too, in this process, there will be times when we will be speaking directly into the subconscious as opposed to the conscious mind, and they never really caught that they were being spoken to at that level, right? As we use different techniques of influence, neurolinguistic programming, cognitive dissonance, dialectical entrapment, you name it, whatever the technique is that will bring you up to speed on. And also, too, the other thing, and by the way, the app that I use is called Tape a Call Pro. Tape a Call Pro. It costs about maybe $8 or $10, but it will allow you to make as many call recordings at an extraordinary level, and very quickly and very simply just email or text the recording back to the prospect or the client.
Great, and we'll go through that in more detail in the next modules, but that's great, Jim. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the next video where we're going to talk about the second phase of this process.
Yeah, the second phase of this process is really the heart of all of the strategies and the techniques that we teach, and it's all based on cognitive dissonance. And this is a, somewhat of a scientific term. I'm sure that there are many of you that are very familiar with this terminology. Cognitive dissonance, basically, when you break the word down, cognitive means, our awareness emotionally, intellectually, experientially of what's going on, of what we're thinking, of what we're feeling. And then dissonance. Dissonance means that there's something that's just not right. The opposite being resonance, right? Where something resonates with us, it means that it works with us. Yes, I understand. It feels good. It makes sense. Right? But cognitive dissonance means that there's an awareness that something's not working, and it could be at a superficial level, but more importantly, it could be at a, almost a chromosomal level where it's just not right. And what cognitive dissonance is, it's really what most of us walk around in. When I say most of us, I speak of all of humanity. We're all walking around in life wanting something that we're not able to get, right? We walk around with these unsatisfied desires, these unanswered needs, this unfilled emotional experience, or acquisition, or state of development, right? Whether it be, how we look physically, our nutrition, or our bank account, or our romantic life, whatever the case may be, there is a dissonance, right? There's a desire to be and to have and to experience something more. And for some reason, because there is an obstacle, whether it be real or perceived, we're unable to achieve what it is that we truly want. And so we carry that unsatisfaction, that dissatisfaction within us. And truly, this is why people come to you in a webinar or a telephone call, or they answer your marketing, or they seek your advice from a podcast, whatever it may be. People are seeking a way to achieve or to acquire or to experience what it is they can on their own.
Exactly. I think as well, that's, as you just mentioned there, Jim, they wouldn't have responded to, let's just imagine you're doing a webinar or whatever. They would not have responded and signed up for that webinar did the headline of the webinar not actually suit them at that particular time. So you can be assured when they come to you, they are looking for something more. And that's actually a point I wanted to ask Jim. Is it always gain that people are seeking, or is it ever anything else other than gain?
No, as I mentioned to you, it could be change. I mean, literally, people could be looking to lose, right? To lose weight, right? So it could be. It's really not so much of a gain as it is satisfaction. Now, because satisfaction, happiness, peace, wellness, balance. This is really what we're looking at. And the aspect of gain or loss is simply, the methodology through which or by which they arrive at this state of satisfaction.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's go through it then and talk about each of the different stages here, and we'll refer back to this idea of satisfaction as we go through it.
The first thing that we want to do is that I always begin by asking the prospect or the client to tell me what it is that their desire is. And here's where individuals, you will learn why it is your client or your prospect will never. And when I say never, I'm using that broadly. I mean, but really, for the most part, has a very slim chance of achieving what it is that they want. Number one, because they're unable to specifically and with alacrity describe to you what it is they want, right? And the old saying is, if we can't see what we want, if we can't speak specifically what we want, then it's impossible for us to achieve it. Because how do you achieve what you don't know you want, right? And so the process of coaching and consulting begins right there. And you see, this is the beautiful aspect of it, because we're not selling. This is not a selling effort. This is a consultative experience where we're bringing individuals from one place to the next and then to the next, right, through a consultative process. So the first thing, like I said, is that I'm asking my prospects, tell me what it is would make you most satisfied in life. I'm asking them the bottom line. I'm not asking them the methodology or the vehicle that's going to bring them to that. I want to know, what is that state, right? Because if I ask them, what is it that you want, they're going to say a lot of money. And the money is the vehicle, right? The money is the vehicle. Or they're going to say, well, I want to lose a lot of weight. Losing a lot of weight is the vehicle. It's the methodology through which you desire at a very, very subconscious, conscious, chromosomal level to arrive at some emotional state, some psychological state of peace, of superiority, of whatever it is, So this is where I'm directing the conversation. I want to get them to what I call the fantasy state, meaning that we're going to begin from the foundation, and from there we're going to scaffold. And this is a term that I will express and describe in later modules, this scaffolding process, because it truly is the key. In order to effectively to become an expert at this process, we must become an expert at scaffolding, right? And I'll teach this. So, but anyway, in the fantasy state, I'm looking for alacrity and specificity, which no one knows how to do, so I do this through my coaching and consultant. Most of the time, by the way, Stephen, when I ask people what it is that is their dream and desire, do you know what they tell me?
I don't know.
They tell me just the opposite of what it is. In other words, what it is they don't want.
Exactly.
What it is they can no longer tolerate. What it is they're looking to avoid, to run away from, right? To escape. And so it's very important at this point that in the fantasy state that I very quickly keep a control of the conversation and bring them back, even if it means forcefully, even if it means being disruptive, right? Because they'll want to run with what it is they don't want. And so it's important for me to get them into a state of what it is that they do desire at the deepest level in their life. Because what we're looking to do is induce an emotional state of well-being, to put them in the place through conversation of what it is they seek. And the magic of the conversation is that if done effectively, we can actually put a person in a mental or an emotional state without them ever having achieved it before, or doing so at a sublimated level without ever having experienced it before, through imagination, through conversation, right? So it's a beautiful exercise, bringing a person into the fantasy state.
It's an even more powerful version of what marketers would typically call future pacing. Would that be right, or is it the same?
No, future pacing is more or less asking people where they want to be, whereas the fantasy state is asking people to be where they want to be. Big difference.
Big difference. Wow.
Right?
Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on then to the transition then from the fantasy state, Jim.
Yeah, the transition is basically where we're bringing that person, once we determine, and this is what's really important in the transition state, and that is knowing when to transition, when to take the conversation from the fantasy state into what we call the despair state, meaning those things, that belief, that conversation, that experience of the beliefs or the events or the perceptions that have kept us and will keep us from achieving the fantasy state. So the transition has an element of timing. What is the right timing to now bring that person to the other side of the conversation? Because it's in the expression and the iteration of the other side of the conversation where we start really accentuating the cognitive dissonance that exists within them, where really what's down deep in their bowels starts surfacing, because it's been, like I said, it's been sublimated, it's been suppressed for so long that people don't even realize that there's this dissonance that exists within them. And oftentimes it manifests itself in stress, in depression, and anxiety, and a feeling of low self-esteem, because we've never become what it is, and what many would say we're destined to be. What many would say that we die unfulfilled, right? The road to hell is lined with good intentions, as we say, right? And so it's knowing when, and then it's effectively transitioning. And the truth is, it's a somewhat simple technique, but yet it's very complex in its timing and also in its understanding of the fact that it's now ready to transition, and now is the time to do it. And we simply do so by saying literally, Stephen, what I'd like to do now is to turn the conversation to those perceptions, beliefs, experiences that have kept you from achieving, and what you perceive will keep you from achieving this experience, this acquisition, this place, this appearance, whatever it may be in life that they have determined is their fantasy, right? What it is that's going to make them fulfilled.
Exactly. And then that moves us into this despair state at that point then, Jim.
Yeah, now understand, this conversation can become very heavy at this point. There's many times that at this point the conversation breaks down in tears. It breaks down to a point of silence. But one way or the other, it must break down. There must be a breakdown. Meaning, it's not that we're trying to emotionally manipulate individuals. That's not the case. The case is we're a consultant, we're a coach, and as a consultant and as a coach, if you are promising, if you're offering the opportunity or the perception to individuals that you are going to get them what it is they want, then we must know what it is that they perceive, believe, experience, encounter that's going to keep them, or has kept them, or will keep them from getting there. And if you don't believe that, then you're not fully integrated as a coach, right? Because there is a degree of psychology, of philosophy, of theology, of you name it, of theology. All of this is involved in being the true 360 coach, if you will, right? And so moving into the despair state, what I'm looking to do now is have the conversation basically of what it is. Tell me what it is specifically that is keeping you and has kept you from achieving what it is that you desire. Now, let me tell you something. At this point, the emotion can more readily surface because one thing that you achieved in the fantasy state. And what is that? Specificity. Specificity. You see, by holding them to specificity in the fantasy state, now there is a direct line, there's a direct open pathway between what it is they want and why it is they can't have it, you see. And by this time also, they are already conditioned to specificity, right? They already know that they have to go down deep. What you're doing is you're taking them down from the surface, from treading on the surface of the water, and you're bringing them down into the depths. There was a book by Robert Bly called Iron John. Iron John. This was during the days of the men's movement back in the, I guess it was the 80s or so. Great book. And the analogy he used was bringing them down into the kitchen. Bringing them down into the kitchen. And this is where we're going. We're going to find out who we really are, because who we really are is determined by those beliefs, by those obstacles. Because again, as I mentioned, we live within the boundaries of our limiting beliefs until something disrupts, expands, removes those beliefs, right? But for the most part, we all live within the realms and the boundaries of our limiting beliefs. And so I want to know what they are. So I bring them and I have a conversation. And in that conversation, what I'm looking to do is have that conversation until I feel that state has been induced at a powerful level, meaning that they're in the despair of the loss of the fantasy, right? They're in despair that they can't get to that point, that their life will be unfulfilled, right? That there is a somewhat of a what should I say? That it's really a shame because the opportunity is there, but for what, right? And then people realize how much of their life they've wasted, how much of their life they will continue to waste because of a belief that is not real, because of an experience that's misinterpreted, because of a fear that's not substantiated. Whatever the case may be, they realize, wow, it's right there, but for, right? And that's your job, but for what? And now we're in the despair state.
Great, and we can't just leave them there. So we have to do something with them, Jim.
You can't leave them there, right? So what do? What we do is we basically get the commitment to change, the commitment to conclude, right? At this point, it's like now they want to do something. They realize they have to do something, but more importantly, people, they realize that you are the person they want to do it with. Why? Because number one, they've never been spoken to this way. Number two, they're not being sold. Number three, they figure that if you're asking the right questions, you then inductively, they conclude you have the right answers, right? If somebody's asking the right questions, wouldn't you then perceive, if the diagnosis is impressive, then the prescription must be accurate and effective, so we believe. And at this point, too, there's a realization that there starts to be a separation of their attachment to money, to resources, to time, as it relates to the fulfillment of their fantasy, because now the fantasy really determines and defines their life. Yes? And so there's a willingness to exchange their resources for your ability to facilitate them, number one, overcoming or removing the obstacles that have them in the despair state, and then facilitate them in achieving the fantasy state that they just enunciated. So there's a commitment from them that you asked, again, reasserting the authority. Number one, having the right. You have the right to ask them, to get them to commit to change. You have the right to assume that you are the one that they want to do it with.
Beautiful. And from there, we obviously are in a situation where they're no longer willing to tolerate where they are. They want us to and really desire us to move them forward in the process. And so that's what we're going to do in this breakdown video. We're going to move to stage 3. We're going to talk about then the definition of the program.
Right, and the definition of the program, understand, must not be a sales pitch. We are not selling. We are not selling, nor will we ever sell again for the rest of our lives. However, we will be successful in generating clients, in generating massive income from the services that we render, the products that we offer, because of this process, because of this technique, and the mastery. More importantly is the mastery of the techniques. As we get into these things, as we drill down, as we go down into the kitchen, as Robert Bly would say. But now what we want to do is, in our program, we want to make it very simple. We want to enunciate it so that it's really not so much the program that's going to get them where they want to be. It's you. It's you that's going to get them there. they're looking for authority. They're not looking for, it's not so much they're looking for leadership, they're looking for authority. I want someone who is confident, who has authority, number one, to bring me through the program, number two, to actually have a program that is authoritative in the sense that it is effective. So my definition of the program is such that I might only reveal to them 5 components. And again, if you read the book by Oren Klaff, if you read Pitch Anything, you'll find that what you're looking to explain are what he calls these hot cognitions, right? Meaning that these are really emotional, or these cognitions, this awareness, again, where this word comes in, this awareness of things that will move me, that are really relevant to me right now, right? So what I will describe my program in terms of is the absolute best terminology that I can use, which is to associate those aspects of my program that will specifically address the needs, the wants, the desires, the deficiencies that particular individual has just expressed to me. So, if an individual is desiring of losing weight, understand the desire is not to lose. The desire is to be a person that is no longer overweight, right? Losing weight is the mechanism. Losing weight is the vehicle to get to that place where we feel healthy, where we feel beautiful, where we now feel that we can associate and we can socialize more effectively. That's really what the client wants. That's the fantasy state. So when I describe my program, what my program will do is address specifically the state. So I may say, if my program is one of nutrition and weight loss, I might say, listen, the program is really very simple. Minimize it. Minimize it, because people don't want complexity unless they want it. There are times where I seek complexity. Like in this program is very simple, but this technology, this methodology of consulting, right, of using a closing consultative methodology is very simple. However, it's very complex in its depths. So getting back to someone who's looking for different nutrition, I'm going to address the program in its simplicity. I'm going to let the individual know that there are many others that have come to me for the same purpose and have achieved the type of results that he or she seeks. So I'm going to use a technique called generalize and minimize, right? So I might say something like this. You know, Stephen, the program that I offer to clients just like yourself is really very simple. And many clients like yourself over time, over the 10 years that I've been offering this to, I would say maybe hundreds of people who have come with the same exact desire that you have, and that is to feel better about themselves, to be able to fit socially in a more comfortable way, to also to feel healthy, and to really appreciate the way that they look and that whole lifestyle of health that they desire. Right? This is the type of results that someone like yourself can expect throughout my program and on the other side of it. See, it's real simple. That's the program. And how do we achieve it? We achieve it with 3 specific components. Number 1, we get very specific about what it is we're looking to achieve, just like we did when we were going through the questioning that we did earlier, and I think we've identified that. Number 2 is we're going to, and this is really very simple, and that is put together a program that is specific to the time that you have available, the nutrition that is appropriate for what it is we're looking to achieve, and also to the amount of resources that you have available to commit to a program like this. And then thirdly, what we're looking to do is stay accountable, right? And so through the authority that I have as your coach, already knowing this program and having experienced it for many years, I can guide you through what I already know will show up. Meaning that there will be times where there will be inconsistencies, there will be a lack of desire, there might be questions or concerns and a need for clarity throughout the program, and also, too, an opportunity to share in the celebrations.
Yeah.
And I know this already, you see. And so this is the program, and if there's any further questions that you have about it, I'm more than happy to speak into them.
Yeah, the thing with that, Jim, just to kind of come in for a second, is that a lot of people would be in a situation where they're very used to talking about feature benefit kind of thing. What you're really saying more so than, as I perceive it, is that you're really discussing the features of the program, and you're tying that into the fact that you are going to bring them through the process of actually getting those things done and achieving it. You're not really talking about benefits all the time, or am I wrong in saying that?
I'm not harping on those because, again, this is not a sales pitch.
Yeah.
You see, there's a need for feature benefit dialogue if there wasn't the conversation of cognitive dissonance. But because we've gone to a much deeper level of what it is the client desires, what it is that they've experienced, and what it is that has thwarted the achievement, the realization of their desires, then there already is an assumption that what it is that I have to offer, and when I frame it in a specific attachment to what it is that we spoke of earlier in the conversation, then there's really no need to harp on the feature benefit cycle, because feature benefit, like I said, for the most part, is somewhat of a surface swimming type of sales strategy and technique, because it really doesn't get into the individual. You don't get into the individual. What we try to do is we try to get our product and our service into the individual in the sales process. And let me tell you something. When you are attempting to insert or connect or integrate an inanimate object or service into a human being, you're gonna have struggles. You're gonna have struggles. But when you insert yourself and when you insert them inside themselves, that's an integrative process that they've never experienced before. And there's no need for the heavy reliance of feature benefit selling.
That's fantastic. I'm sure that's a relief to everybody listening to this.
We also, finally, in the program, we also minimize, again, because it's never about cost. It's never about cost. Now, it may be about affordability. It may be about affordability, but it's never about cost once we have executed the cognitive dissonance strategy effectively. Right? So, now, I'm not saying that we're foolish and we look to price gouge individuals. No, it's not ethical. But what is ethical is for you to be remunerated at a level of a professional that can specifically and effectively assist individuals and facilitate individuals into achieving what it is they desire in life. Because the truth is, there's very few successful coaches. There's very few. In the sense that they take ownership for their client success, that they take ownership for what it is that they're teaching at an extraordinary, at an academic, at an intellectual, at an experiential level, that they take ownership of their client's learning, that the learning that the client will experience has been facilitated because of the teaching methodology that the coach uses, that the consultant, that we use, you see. It's a very, very deep level. So for me to request, not to request, but basically to assign an economic value to what it is that I'm offering, I have that right to do so. And the first thing that I generally do with all of my clients is I ask them, what price, what value have you attached to what it is you're offering? And 99 out of 100 times, they're highly undervalued. And if you're highly undervalued, then how can you possibly deliver value? Why would anyone believe that I can deliver extraordinary value if I'm presenting to them a very valueless or value-deprived economic proposition? Do you understand? I mean, if I'm offering a car, a brand new car at $3,000, what kind of value would you perceive that car has? But if I'm offering you a car for sale at $75,000, well, you may not have $75,000, but you will perceive and probably agree and conclude that that car has some extraordinary value, even if you haven't driven it, even if you're not even familiar with the car. You see, there's a difference between cost and affordability. What I want to do is I want to talk to individuals who can afford or have the availability to afford what it is I'm offering. And that's the filtering process that we put in place before. Because I'd rather speak to 5 qualified prospects than 500 suspects who could never afford what it is that I'm offering.
That's great.
And I'm not going to devalue my program in order to try to sell it at a giveaway price. You see, you can't deliver value.
That's perfect. So what we'll do then, Jim, in the later module, when we go into definition and program, we'll break down revealing the investment, and we'll break down the payment reveal as well. And we'll talk about strategies around both of those. And there's a lot in there. So we'll move on to the final stage now, Jim, and talk about resistance. And we'll come back to those at a later date, because I think that could this could become a much longer conversation very quickly if we jump into those in too much detail. So with your permission, Jim, I'm going to move on to stage 4, which is resistance. And then we're going to end this video of breaking down the entire conversion call process.
Okay, and here's where everybody is challenged. Yes, we're all challenged at this point, and that is the point where we meet resistance. And what it is we're not meeting resistance. Understand this. The first thing that we must do, that we have the opportunity to do, is to reframe resistance in our mind. Because to the salesman, resistance shows up as what? As an objection. Or worse, as a refusal, as a rejection. Right? They rejected my offer. They refused my offer. They objected to my offer in the moment, or they objected to my price. And there's many different ways that objections show up. Right? Let me think about it. I need to speak with my wife. I'm doing some competitive shopping. Let me get your website and take a look at it. And all of this is where, as a consultant, we hate to find ourselves. We hate to find ourselves there. Because this is the realm of where we feel we now have to become what? Pressured salesman, pushy. And we hate it. And that's why we're on this call, because the promise is never sell again. And it's true. And I'm going to hold to that, because I'm going to teach you a methodology where, when you meet the objection, when you meet the rejection or the resistance, you will no longer feel the need to respond as a salesman. Okay? Number 1, let's get it reframed in our own minds. First of all, there is no objection. There are no objections. This is my belief. What is an objection? Well, I mean, if I take the word object, if you objectify something and you take the object, the first thing I ask you is, where is the object? Where's the object in the objection, right? Where's the object in I want to think about it? There's no object there. Where's the object is, well, you know, I need to talk to my wife. Where's the object? You might say the wife. No, there's no object there. Let me look at your website and get back to you. There's no object there. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no objections. So first thing I ask you to do, go to your bookshelf, take every sales book that you have, except for maybe Oren's book, which is a pretty damn good one because it's based on psychology. Take them all and throw them away, because they're all going to teach you how to overcome objections, right? Feel, felt, found, right? How to reframe the objection and get a commitment to the singular objection by eliminating the future, the multiple objections, etc., etc. How to take them through a closing sequence. None of this is effective, and all of it will put you back into the role of a salesman. And let me tell you, the minute you start selling your prospect, you no longer can consult them, because they will always perceive you to be a salesman. They're always going to be looking out for you to sell them the next session, the next product, right? You know what I'm talking about. And you can't stand it. So, number one, understand there are no objections. And I know you don't know where to go with that yet. So where do I go, right? You're in what's called cognitive dissonance right now. Right? So it's like, wait, I want there to be no objections, but there are objections. But now you're telling me no, there are no objections. I want that to be the case, but I truly believe that there are objections because every time I ask a client to do business with me, they always give me an objection. All right. So, number one, there are no objections. Now, first thing that I want to do in the process, oh, by the way, you might say, well, what are there if there are no objections? I'll get to that in just a minute. But whenever someone gives me what you at this point might believe to be an objection, the first thing I'm looking to do is align with that individual. Because number one, it's going to keep me in the position of authority. It's also going to give me an opportunity to empathize with the individual. And also, two, it's going to enable me to keep that person from bringing up the walls, the critical filters that they might have about any conversation that I would have subsequent to them. So it might sound something like this. Well, Jim, it sounds like a great program, and God, from what we discussed, it's pretty obvious that I need it. But let me get back with you. I can reach you at this number. Take a look at your website, and then we can talk from there. Are you good with that? And so the first thing that I'm going to do is align with them. And the answer would sound something like this. Oh, I'm absolutely good with it. As a matter of fact, I truly believe that taking time to make choices of this type, making certain that you feel comfortable and congruent with what it is that you're seeking and what it is that the course is offering, I mean, of course you're going to take your time. I absolutely agree that you should. Now, ladies and gentlemen, are you willing to meet an objection on those terms? Are you willing to not only agree with, but in fact overstate the objection that the client gave you? Jim, I need to talk to my wife about these types of decisions. We made a commitment that we never spend money without, first of all, talking about it, sleeping on it, and consulting the economic advisor we have about these types of decisions. My answer? Of course you don't. Of course you're going to speak with your wife. It would be foolish not to. As a matter of fact, it's very important that you do. So anyway, that's where I go with this. And then, of course, there's some other steps that we'll take in this, but we'll go into each one of them one by one, and we'll close that loop and answer how it is to reframe an objection so that you're no longer facing that again in your life.
That's amazing, Jim. Well, that's the entire process. As I'm sure you can see here, there's a lot to this, but again, as we would say in the generalize, minimalize, it is very simple when you understand each step and you integrate it into yourself. And fear not, Jim, you have teaching methodologies that I'm sure you'll mention just before we wrap up here that make this process simple through analogies and things like that, right?
Oh yes, there's a number of different technologies, again, using NLP integration, using analogical encoding, using spatial repetition. There's a number of teaching methodologies that I employ with my clients that I'll also instruct through these modules to make you a more effective coach and, more importantly, make your clients more effective clients.
Yeah, that's perfect. And we will have some questions for you inside the PDF just beneath this video. So make sure you do those exercises because they truly are very, very important. These are the exercises that are going to, again, help you integrate this into yourself so that you can easily remember and recall these steps when you're going through the process with a client. And of course, we're going to give you a handy chart It's going to break down each of those steps for you so that whenever you do your calls in the future, we don't have a sales script. We throw those out the window. Instead, we have this simple process. And when you understand how to do everything within the process, it's just a matter of looking at that and then simply going through the process with the client. And that's it. So that's module 2. That is the conversion call. We're going to jump into module 3 next and go through that first stage, that first phase of the conversion call. So we'll see you on the next module.